Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Welcome to Culture Binge, where we feast on the zeitgeist and tell you all about what a mistake it was. For everyone watching live, thanks for joining in. I'm sure you're all pouring in slowly. I'm Alec. I'm the managing editor at Wisecrack. I'm hosting the show. I'm here with Wisecrack researcher Serby.
Hi everyone.
And the what's the word I'm thinking of? The Count of Condensation, Michael Burns, PhD.
Glad to be here.
So, a few announcements before we get into it today. First of all, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening, or Michael will think you hate him. I know he's got problems with catastrophic thinking. Don't mean to call you out like that, but
wow.
Pretty sure.
I got emotionally vulnerable on a podcast, and now I'm being mocked for it. Real nice.
I'm so sorry. Next announcement is we're doing 2, maybe 3 episodes in November, which is a little bit change of what I said from yesterday. Then we're doing 1 in December, which is our quasi break, also taking a break through part of January, and we will be back for quote unquote season 2 of Culture Binge in the middle of January. And you can come back to all that cultured goodness that you know and love. So part of that is just so that I can have time to be on the Rick and Morty podcast, The Squanch. So go subscribe to that if you haven't already. That will come out November 11th. Part of that is presumably that Michael and Serby need to spend time with their families, if they even have families. Yeah, so sorry. So thank you all for listening to date. And we can't wait for the other shows that we have to make. We've got a lot of really cool stuff on today's show. Serby will be talking about a DNA website that is barring police from using people's genetic information to solve cold cases, at least without their permission. I'll be talking about the maybe philosophy of Netflix unveiling 1.5 speed on Android and some other things. Also filmmakers being very mad about it, or at least Judd Apatow. And Michael is going to talk about daylight savings time. He's going to get real deep into it, I believe.
So deep.
But before we get into those wonderful topics, it's your favorite or most hated time of the week. What's lifting our spirits and what's dragging them right back down? What slaps? What chaps? Let's go with Serby. I feel like I call on Serby out first all the time, but it's okay.
That's okay. So what chaps? The wind here in Southern California is kicking up the fires and allergies, and it's very stressful. I feel very sad when people are evacuated from their homes and we're without power and things like that. It's very, very stressful. So I have to say October used to be one of my favorite months, but now I dread it. Every time October rolls around, I feel like I get very nervous. So that chaps. But what slaps is that HBO ordered a Game of Thrones prequel. It's called The House of the Dragon. It will be set 300 years before the original show, and it will tell the Targaryen story. And it was straight to series order, I think is how you say it, and there will be 10 episodes.
I have a question. Didn't they also just cancel a Game of Thrones prequel? Was that a different one?
They did, yeah. So that was a different one. So I think
that
they
one
had like
sounded
5.
good.
Pardon?
Oh, the one that they canceled sounded really good. Like reading the description of that one, the one that was taking place like 3,000 years before or whatever. That's all. I'm sorry to interject.
I heard that they didn't like Naomi Watts as the lead. At least I read some article or something about that. But this one sounds good. I like that there will be dragons. I like dragons.
Who doesn't?
This has a weird tie into the Netflix topic, but we'll get there. What about you, Michael?
Oh, for what's left, that was on my list of potential, so I'm glad you got to it. I'm very excited about that, having only recently watched all of Game of Thrones. So what slaps today for me? A good friend and sort of intellectual comrade of mine named Jamie Arusi. He's an academic based in Brooklyn, New York. Shouts to Alec. Published an opinion column in the New York Times today.
Wow.
So the New York Times has this subsection of their opinion column called The Stone. That's like philosophical, says. Yeah. So my buddy Jamie published one today. It's called Are You a Moderate? Think Again. And yeah, I won't like get into it. I literally just read it on the way here because they put it up. But everyone go check it out, whether you love it or hate it. Jamie's a really interesting guy and a great political philosopher. And I'm happy that the New York Times gave him some shine. So that, in my mind, slaps pretty hard.
Congratulations, Jamie. We're so happy for you.
And what's chapping?
Oh, sorry. I didn't know we were doing chapping yet. Okay, I'll be quick with this. What chaps all week? It's been annoying me. This new Kanye West album sucks, and I'm so bored of hearing people try to talk about like how it's good or important or interesting. And it's just this reminder that so much of popular culture, in particular music, is like people arguing for the value of things that suck because of the hype that surrounds those things. And of course, this happens in like movies as well, but I just find it really annoying, and it lowers the overall cultural discourse when like we're not allowed to say that people that used to make good art now make bad art. And I think it's probably a sign of a culture in which clicks matter more than real critical takes. But yeah, that's been chapping my ass all week.
That's a great one. For me, what slaps? Silicon Valley, new season just came out. I just love that show so much. Not that the first episode was like stood out more than say like the rest of the show, but I really like it. And also I think it's sad that's last season because I think it's more culturally relevant than ever. And it seems like this season is going to cover sort of the impossibility of doing the right thing when working in tech. I guess that's always kind of what the show's been about, but they sort of did a good setup for that, which I very much appreciate. So great show. If you haven't seen it, I would binge the hell out of it. As far as what chaps, for the last 6 months at least, I've been getting the same exact ad on Spotify for the same band for the same song at least 20 times a day. This is my complaint about all like online like TV has more ads, but they're usually all different ads. But whenever I like watch Hulu or anything like that and there's ads, it's always the same ad. So I've heard the song probably thousands of times at this point. I have a lot of so the band I think is called Earthquake Lights. I've never heard of them. They have
horrible name.
The song that they advertise has like 6,000 views on YouTube, and I have so many questions like, how do they afford this? Am I the only one getting these ads? They're from Brooklyn. Is that why I'm getting these ads? Why won't they stop? They also play a snippet of the song in every ad, so it's constantly stuck in my head. And the song isn't even that bad necessarily. It kind of just sounds like I would vaguely describe it as something Ed Sheeran might have made. But yeah, please make it stop.
Also, can people donate money so Alec can upgrade to Spotify Premium and not have to listen to ads? Because it's like $8.
I don't want to out of principle. I'm all about supporting art. I'd like rather buy like a record or go to a concert or buy merch. That's how I would rather support the musicians.
Hey, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. At this point, it's a routine, but thanks, Dude Abides, for donating.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, let's get into the first topic. Serby, you want to talk about DNA collection websites, Ancestry, all that good stuff?
Yes, I do. So for those of you who are not aware, there are these take-home DNA kits where you do like a cheek swab, you send it in to the organization, and then they upload your results online. And it is about, like, people used to do it to find out their ancestry, their health, see if they have any relatives out there. So when it started out, it was a fun thing that families would do, like at Christmas. I heard of a few friends that would do it, and then they would all wait around and find the results. But in 2018, detectives in California used one of these databases for investigative purposes. And what they did was they submitted DNA from a crime scene, and they found distant relatives to the perpetrator. And they eventually captured the Golden State Killer, who is a serial killer and serial rapist. So this sparked a revolution in forensics, and it helped solve more than 50 rapes and homicides in more than 29 states. And so that was really good, but people didn't take that news well. They felt that using their DNA for investigative purposes was a privacy violation. So the company that allowed investigators to go through the database changed its policy to restrict law enforcement searches. So now users have to opt in to allow these types of searches. And these cold cases have become much harder to solve. So because of this, law enforcement authorities now want to convince the public to obtain their DNA profiles and then share them publicly with law enforcement. So now we have two sides of this argument. One is that law enforcement authorities argue that there's a greater public good in helping keep killers and rapists off the streets. The other side of the argument is that consumers argue that their DNA profiles could get hacked. They could be used against their wishes, for example, used in law enforcement searches or sold to healthcare organizations. And they fear that this could lead to the end of anonymity. So what do you think? Do we have a duty to share our DNA to help catch killers, or should we protect our privacy?
I think privacy.
Yeah. What do you want to talk about? I have lots of things to say, but you can go first.
I mean, I have no big take here. I feel bad because obviously, like, there's a way one can set up this question that's like, do you want to bring horrific people to justice, or do you care about your privacy? And I feel bad saying that, but I do think privacy is an issue here. And I have a friend who's a genetic scientist, and part of the way through her graduate degree, she started posting online a lot. And this is when like 23andMe and the Ancestry.com DNA kits were getting really popular. And her take to everyone was like, do not do this, because your genetic data will not only be available in certain cases for law enforcement, but also for like research companies, corporations, people trying to make profit off of your genetic data. And I know that's bringing up a wider discussion, but ever since I've had that take from that very smart person, I've just always thought that it's pretty problematic to be selling your genetic data to a private company. And I think this is an example of where those lines can get really blurry. And I don't know the exact example at hand. We can look this up later. But I know for a fact, at least a couple people have been falsely accused because of this as well. So people have gotten like, we caught bad killers, good, lock them up. But there's other people who, because their DNA, like they were like the brother or the adopted kid of blah, 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 blah. But they got in trouble for stuff they didn't do. And that would be wild if like the feds rolled into your house and locked you up because they misread your DNA sample or something.
Yeah, I think about this a lot, so I'm really glad you brought it up, Serby. So I have like a whole multi-pronged thing. To Burns' point about DNA test, I mean, DNA tests can be hugely helpful. I was actually talking to a lawyer yesterday, just like a friend of a friend. And they're not a trial lawyer, but had, I guess, partaken in some like jury selection as part of their law training, law school, that kind of stuff. And it was a case where there was DNA evidence. And, you know, when you go to court and you have a jury, lawyers get to decide, you know, what jurors to keep. And so one of the lawyers wanted to strike anyone with a statistics background. And the reason is because oftentimes DNA tests will say, oh, it's a 98% match. And for most people, 98%, like they definitely did it. But when you like statistically, that means that out of every 100 cases where it's a 98% certainty, there will be 2 cases where it's not. So, right, that's not necessarily a slam dunk. Now, considered with other evidence about was their motive, were they at the right place, did blah, 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 like, yeah, that can make a really compelling case. But that scared me. And there's just a lot of cases. And I think there's a nonprofit that does this, that tries to, a lot of times expert witnesses in court cases presenting DNA evidence will kind of oversell the efficacy of it or the accuracy of it. Mm-hmm. So like I'm all about using DNA as like a tool, but like understanding the uncertainty of it. But I think the criminal justice system has tried to deny the sort of uncertainty of DNA test in a way that's like incarcerated a lot of innocent people. And for anyone who's listened to Serial, this is like one of the questions there is, I think there was DNA evidence that has sort of come into question.
Yeah.
So that's just DNA test. Not saying that who's the guy, the killer they caught.
Golden State Killer.
Yeah, not to say that that guy is probably innocent, but anyway, I'm sure they had other evidence. I think the two other things I have to say is that I think the company sort of did the right thing and says so. It's not a company that was the database. It was like a public access thing that like anyone researching their DNA could use. So it's not the same as 23andMe, these sort of people who have a financial motive to sell your data to whoever. But so they took everyone like sort of off the use for law enforcement, and they gave them the option to opt in and are encouraging them to do so. So I'm like mostly okay with that. However, my other big complaint about this is that it's not just your genetic information, it's anyone related to you. Now, obviously, this is true when you find a serial killer through the DNA of their relatives. But I mean, and I might have brought this up before, I'm so paranoid about this stuff that I like message my dad's like, under no circumstances for Christmas do not get anyone, me, you, or anyone in the family like a DNA test, because if my father, for instance, takes DNA test, that's half of my genetic information that someone could easily, hack into, or because they're private companies buy. Right now, it is illegal for insurance companies to discriminate for genetic reasons, because that's enshrined in law, and that's great, but laws can change. And so that's kind of one big concern there. And not only that, like we're selling the genetic information of all of our sort of progeny, the grandchildren we have and all of that. And so, sure, in a few generations, you might only be 1/16 of someone's DNA, but when everyone's sort of sold it there. And we see bad instances of this now. Like there was a researcher who was doing genotyping of Chinese citizens with some Chinese scientists. It turns out the Chinese government was trying to make a genetic database of like Uyghur Muslims that they're putting into camps and all this horrible shit. So it's bad. And the other thing is that, like more in the American super scary dystopian realm, is that I think, as a country, we have like great safeguards of privacy. Like it's kind of built into our constitution, our legal tradition that protects us from, like search and seizure without a warrant and all that great stuff. But I think there's like a pressure where that's kind of being eroded because not through the government, not through like the police necessarily searching through your trash cans or breaking your house when you're not there, but they're finding all these private means to more or less do the same thing in a way that's not overtly illegal. So for instance, if the police were to try to swab you and take your genetic information without you knowing, that would probably be super illegal. But because it's been put here. Another one is that a lot of the NSA surveillance that was happening, it was sort of, a lot of the information was pulled specific to certain cases that they had reason to, but all that information got dumped into like a resource that the FBI just like casually peruses all the time. So they don't need like a warrant for that, and like regular people could be implicated in that. And the third example is there's those is it Ring, the doorbells with the cameras have been like a big thing where whoever the company is cutting deals with law enforcement to sort of give the footage to them to help solve crimes. But whereas we would, like, if the police were to say, we're going to put up a camera on every street corner, I think a lot of privacy minded people would be like, hey, I don't like that. But now because a private company's doing it and then selling it to law enforcement, all of a sudden it's fine. So now you're subject to police surveillance because your neighbor has like installed this thing. And so it's kind of this problem of, we can look at cold cases and say, well, serial killers are the worst. But then there was a case where they used the genetic database to like solve an assault. And then it might get into things like using genetic information to see who littered a joint on the street, or, like it's just, I think it like it's sort of an encroaching thing that, I don't know, I think we should stop. And I think that ends my rant.
Hell of a rant. I loved it.
I love a good rant. I love a good Alec rant. I agree. I think that like the idea is nice. Like we want to help solve cold cases, but I don't think that it should be at the expense of our privacy, because it's like Alex said, it's a slippery slope. Like, where do we draw the line? And one of the last things we have to keep private is our DNA. I mean, we don't, our pictures are online, social media, our thoughts, everything is online unless you learned at a very young age not to post anything online. So the only thing we have left that's to ourselves is our DNA. And I just can't imagine wanting to do that, to like make that publicly available. And last Christmas, I was at my uncle's place, and he's highly intelligent, very smart. But he did one of these DNA like direct to consumer kits because my cousin had said, "Oh, you should do it. Like let's like see what they say." And so we were there when he opened up the results, and all of us looked over and basically just laid into him for doing it. And they're like, "You're exposing our entire family to this database. Like, how could you do that?" And you could see it like slowly dawn on him, like what he had done. And he was like, "I need to call the company to see if what I can do about this." But you could see him like, he did it in the moment just to make my cousin happy. And you could see like the sickness like that was like settling in, and was like, what have I done? And like, how do I stop this?
Sounds like every Christmas I've ever been out with my family. Just what have I done and how do I stop this? But no, but I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Alec.
No, I've talked a lot.
Oh, but it's good. No, yeah, this just ties into to the fact that like we already knowingly or unknowingly are selling our data at a constant rate, and our data sets are becoming one of the biggest commodities in the world right now. So by adding our DNA to it, it's just an unreal amount of both like numerical, analytic, and now genetic data about us that can be bought and sold, which is just so horrifying and does lead to dystopian thinking. And then I just say like the other thing, I know Alec was getting into this with surveillance. We had like a bad era in America in like the early 2000s where we started giving over way more leverage and surveillance and opening up all these pathways. And I think that like under the guise of safety, it's very easy to sort of implicitly give up a lot of rights to privacy. And that's very scary. And that often happens in very subtle ways. And this seems like one of those openings that'd be very dangerous, where a lot of people could hear, oh, on paper, access to this helps us catch murderers, objective moral good. But there's just so much underneath that can go unconsidered when trying to frame something like this in a good PR way.
Yeah, and I also think not only from the government, but just having the genetic information floating out there, whether in a public database like this one or like a private one that could get hacked. And I mean, it's just the more time goes on, the more likelihood there is to be some leak. There's also just like nefarious actors, and there's also things that there's things we don't necessarily understand about our DNA. Like we can look to certain things now and say, oh, this is the marker for XYZ. But imagine, for instance, I think like sometimes 23andMe and those websites will say, oh, you have a 20% higher chance of Alzheimer's or schizophrenia. Imagine if, say, a political candidate was getting blackmailed by whoever to say like, hey, I know you have this increased risk and I can spin this narrative. Or even, just like a prominent public figure, or even just to say like, anyone trying to extort money for any reason. And that also gets super scary. Yeah. Sorry, I'll leave it there.
So I have a question. Do either of you use, like if you have iPhones, I'm not sure if Android does this, but you use your thumbprint to unlock the phone, or you do the facial recognition to unlock the phone? Do either of you do that?
I don't have an iPhone, but I know people who do it.
Yeah, I can't imagine doing that. Like, you're allowing Apple to store your fingerprints and to use your face for facial recognition. I just don't understand that.
Yeah, this is the last thing. I haven't looked into this. This is like secondhand information, so anyone who knows more about this, please write us. But that kind of facial recognition, especially machine learning stuff, these companies will often partner with cities to put in, traffic cameras or other kinds of like things to give people red light tickets or other things like that. But what they're really doing is just building, like they're using that database to build like a stronger, like we can like recognize everyone's faces and sell this information to advertisers and tell people like where they're going. It's all a dystopian nightmare, and I hate it all. But anyway, I think this is a good time as any to move on to our next topic, unless anyone wanted to add anything.
No, I'm just really upset now.
Yeah, thanks, Serby. Thanks for upsetting us. It
Yes,
was a great
this
topic.
sucks.
Thank you.
God damn it.
So before we get into the next topic, which I will be talking about Netflix, I want to thank our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Skillshare. It's definitely Skillshare. It's not another company that begins with an S. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of amazing classes covering dozens of creative and entrepreneurial skills. You can take classes in everything from photography and creative writing to design, productivity, and more. So whether you're returning to a longtime passion project, challenging yourself to get outside of your comfort zone, or simply exploring something new, Skillshare has classes for you. For those of you who don't know, I edit almost every script that you see on Wisecrack, along with this guy named Jared. He's cool. I also write a ton of episodes that you've probably seen, and I like to be a better writer. I like to hone my craft. So that's one of the reasons that Skillshare is great, because they offer resources to people like me who are either trying to be better or learn something entirely new. Personally, I recommend, I took the creative nonfiction Write Truth with Style with Susan Orlean. I've talked about this a little bit before. She's super great. She's a staff writer at The New Yorker. She's also an author of a bunch of books, so definitely knows what she's doing. But the class really helped me think through writing the video essays that we do. It helped me think about the kinds of stuff we're publishing on Medium. And just as a person, I enjoy listening to other writers' perspective on the writing process as a way to think about my own process. So it's really helpful. And I think no matter what sort of field you're in, that could also be helpful for you. But you can join the millions of students already learning on Skillshare today with a special offer just for Culture Binge listeners. You can get 2 months free. That's right. Skillshare is offering you 2 months of unlimited access to thousands of classes for free. To sign up, just go to Skillshare.com/culturebinge. Skillshare.com/culturebinge. And one more time softly, Skillshare.com/culturebinge. That's all. We can get on to the topic. Thank you all so much.
I love that ASMR plug at the end with Skillshare.com.
Do I have to like...
Yeah, that was really nice. I enjoyed it a lot. Skillshare.com.
Oh yeah, do that while I plug Skillshare again.
Anyway, so my story this week is on Netflix. So there's a great article on CNET that I found. I was reading about this topic earlier, but the CNET article is the headline is "Binge watching Netflix at 1.5 speed is the horror future we deserve." And this is the paragraph from that article. I think there should be a link in the description. Last week, Android police first reported that Netflix was testing a variable speed feature allowing viewers on Android devices to slow down playback to 0.5 or 0.75 speed, or speed it up to 1.25 or 1.5. Netflix confirmed the reports on Monday, saying in a statement that is always experimenting and that this latest test was limited to mobiles and, quote, may not become a permanent feature on Netflix. This did not stop the ire of Judd Apatow, who tweeted, "No, Netflix, no. Don't make me have to call every director and show creator on earth to fight you on this. Save me the time. I will win." But it will take a ton of time. Don't fuck with our timing. We give you nice things. Leave them as they were intended to be seen. So I think there's like a few things here. One is kind of like this creator, watch it the way it was meant to be watched, god damn it, or I will blackmail you or something. The second thing is kind of like the acceleration of consumption. This article kind of brings this up, but you know, on one side there's the supply pipeline of new original content from Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime, and there's just so much fucking TV to watch. But on the other end of that, that means that we, to be culturally relevant, have to watch more and more, or there's something to binge culture in that we feel like we have to be completionists. So yes, I need to watch every single episode of Game of Thrones, and I haven't seen one, even if the ending is terrible. And then the third thing I think this kind of falls into is like the ever optimization of our lives. But I'll just say before getting your take that I hate to be that guy, but I watch stuff usually 1.25 or 1.5. I can't go up to 2, although sometimes I can, but for work purposes, because when I have to watch a season of a show to make sure a script isn't wrong, I don't know, I got things to write, I got things to edit. Like, what else am I going to do? So everyone send me lots of hate mail. But yeah, what do you guys think?
I mean, I kind of agree with one of the points you brought up, that it just taps into this acceleration of culture, and this sort of growing expectation that we consume at a larger rate and that we are productive at this faster rate. Makes me think of, and I forget the exact gist of it, but this theorist William Connolly wrote a good book about speed, not the drug, as it relates to like culture and consumption. And it makes me think as well, they did a study, and follow up with me, and I can link this if people think I'm just making this up. I rarely make things up. But they did a study years ago about the way in which we, the speeds at which we consume culture and the types of things we consume, especially when they're visual mediums, affects the development of our brains. So like they made real young kids watch old movies, and they just got so bored so quickly. And in older films, if you like turn on Turner Classic Movies one night, you'll notice the shift between scenes and frames is so much slower. So we might linger in one scene for like 20 seconds, then cut for 15 seconds. Where if you watch like The Bourne Ultimatum, it's like cut, 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 cut. And that constant cut rate then affects the way that our brain perceives reality and then what our desire is. So these like young kids, you make them watch a Sam Peckinpah movie and their brain is just like, move, do something. This is boring. This is boring. So that's like a real thing. So I just wonder if we lead into this culture then where, I can watch all the shows at 1.75 speed. What is that going to do to like neural development? And especially because it is a lot of younger kids and developing brains on their phones doing that. And then on the more Apatow side, and Lord help me, agreeing with Judd Apatow is rarely a thing I want to do. But yeah, like certain stuff like dumb TV shows, and I'm not saying that pejoratively, I love dumb TV. I mean, if you blaze through that at fast speed, cool. But I don't know, some filmmakers are legit trying to make art, and they're trying to make something that's important and says something. So I think the idea that someone spends lots of time and money creating something that has a meaningful point of view, and that someone's going to like not only watch it on their phone, but just be blazing through it, I think that does suck a little bit.
I agree with that. I think so. And then to defend like slowing things down, I'm trying to learn Italian and it's very hard. And it would be nice to like slow things down and to get pronunciation correct and understand words and things like that when they move too fast. So I can see the benefit of slowing things down as well. I also I get the fact that filmmakers want to preserve their art and they have timing for specific artistic reasons. But overall, I don't understand like the anger that's coming from this Mr. Apatow. I don't even know who he is. I mean, the tweet was funny to me. I don't know who this guy is.
He's made so many movies, you know.
Wow.
Really?
He's going to be so mad when he... super bad. 40-year-old virgin. What is the one with the follow-up to... Oh, God. But Knocked Up. This is 40. The one with Adam Sandler where he's a comedian.
I've heard of 40-year-old virgin. I know that one.
So I like these movies. Not exactly high art.
No. That's the thing. I think I would agree more with what Apatow said as applied to other filmmakers, not his own films. And of course, worth noting, Apatow and Serbi, I know you don't know a lot about him. Something he's often criticized for is his movies being way too long. So taking a movie that should be like a 90-minute comedy and it'll be like 2 hours and 10 minutes. And that's sort of the constant critique of Apatow movies. So it is a little bit ironic that he would be the one that was so upset about this.
Okay. I guess I just don't see like the problem. I mean, too much. It doesn't, maybe people get bored. Maybe they have like some kind of condition that requires them to like, they need to consume information faster because of like attention issues, or I don't know, like everybody's different. Everybody has like specific needs. And if we need to slow things down or speed things up, I don't see the issue. However, for brain development and that reason, I do think that speeding it up could be a problem.
I'm pro the choice, partially for selfish. I'm so frustrated when I need to watch something on 1.5 speed for work and I can't because it's on Netflix. I like the option, and I think it's a weird like no one is ever really consuming your art in the way it was intended. I mean, because it gets to all this kinds of purism, like, oh, it's really meant to be watched in the theater. And don't get me wrong, like I appreciate like, oh, this movie's great, but it's so great like in the theater with the great speakers and all this. The same thing happens for music. There's debates about what tempo Beethoven's music was meant to be played at and all that stuff. The music is still great regardless, and I think, you know, it is like a curiosity, or could be even better to watch it at the true tempo. But even when you think about things like people who use subtitles for language reasons, accessibility reasons, whatever, I mean, I sometimes watch stuff with subtitles, and it definitely distracts from the visuals that the artist clearly put a lot of time and effort into, and I'm able to pick up on less. But I'm not saying get rid of subtitles. And not to mention that half the people watching Netflix are doing shit in the background, right? Like, you know, I have sat down and watched The Office, like fully watched it, but now I watch it to go to bed. And, you know, it wasn't meant to be watched with your eyes closed half of the time because you're trying to fall asleep. But like, it's fine. And so, like, I would personally encourage people to, put thought into movies and TV, because I think artists make a lot of really cool and interesting choices when it comes to timing. And a lot of times actors will give these great performances with nuanced facial expressions that may sort of dissipate away when you're on 1.5 speed. And that's all cool, but to assume that everyone needs that experience 100% of the time is, yeah, I don't know. I'm not super into it.
No.
The other thing is that, well, you're talking about the acceleration. It's almost like, you know, economically, everything needs to get produced faster and faster for more profit. But on the other end, like, that motive also means that we always have to be consuming things faster and faster. And that could even just mean like buying more luxury goods. You know, one of the reasons recessions happens because people stop buying things. But I think with such like a media, I don't know if the economy is media centric, but, you know, the media is a huge part of that. These companies that need to make more and more money, is it a boon for them that people are watching things on 1.5 speed, because then they can watch more shows and then get in more advertisements? Obviously that's not true on Netflix because there's no ads, but like if you're on Hulu or traditional cable, maybe it's better that people watch things on 1.5 speed. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah.
But it is, I think I've noticed over the past like month, I feel like there've been multiple topics that all of us have brought up that always come back to this culture of constant, quick, and efficient consumption. So I can be blazing through my movies fast as possible while someone shows up and delivers me my food just when I want it, and I don't have to go get my like household groceries anymore because I can get those set up at a standing delivery. And like so many parts of our lives are just becoming accelerated and automated for the sake of, you know, for anyone listening, I just put my hands up in the sort of shrug emoji thing. But I think like convenience, but it's like convenience for the sake of what? Like what do we need to rush through all of this stuff for? What's on the other end of that? And I think what you were kind of getting at, Alec, is if it's just creating the space for more rapid consumption, then it becomes like this sort of cultural cokehead thing. Where like, and I mean, I've truly never done cocaine, but from what I understand about it, you do some the first time and you're it's great, but then you need to do more and more and more and more to kind of keep up that initial thing, and that's what worries me, that the acceleration becomes this sort of addictive thing. But hey, show up in the comments if you are an active cocaine user and tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah, and I think another thing of that is culturally, I think a big part of binge culture is that it feels like an accomplishment. And I'm like this all the time. Like, it's not just when I used to watch cable television and it's just like, fuck, I just watched 18 Seinfeld reruns that I've already seen. What am I doing with my life? Now I'm like, I just watched 3 seasons of Breaking Bad, you know, in one day. I'm so fucking accomplished. I'm going to be a completion. I'm going to finish it. And look at me. I've done something today. And I feel like I'm not shitting on it. Like, a lot of people have that feeling. So to be able to do that faster, I think just adds to that, like, yeah, I'm accomplished. Like, I've seen every important show that's come out, even though there's way too many of them.
But it does create that junkie mindset where like you finish your binge of Breaking Bad and those credits roll and then you feel this absence and it's like, okay, what's next? Ooh, Better Call Saul, or whatever it is. Like, I think that's the scary thing, that it creates the desire for more consumption at the completion of that.
Do you think it results from wanting to fit in? Like if everybody's talking about a show and you're not watching it, you feel this need to rush through it so you can be a part of that conversation?
I don't know. I think these shows are designed for you to keep going. Like, I think there's a reason why, like, especially shows that are made for streaming, often break with traditional structure and make sure there's something at the very end so that you're like, ooh, I got to watch one more. And for me, at least, that doesn't come from wanting to fit in. It just comes from, like, how can I live without having access to knowing what happens? There's content out there that I can consume. Why shouldn't I?
I think, yeah, for me, it's not even as much about fitting in, but whether it's like TV, film, or like, I think I'm most this way for books. It's like, uh, you know, Nabokov or Shakespeare or whoever are like important cultural figures that like I should know about. And so I have this mentality of like, I need to read a lot of classics, just so that like, I don't know, I can be more cultured. Like like it's, to me, it's like the same. I like learning. So I'm learning about culture. And I think, to be honest, like TV's so fucking good right now. Whether it's a show like Mad Men or Breaking Bad, like it's kind of this, at least for me, it's like this learning thing, right? Like I'm learning about this important cultural thing, even if it was 5 or 6 years ago. And I even have that desire for like older shows. Like I feel like I should go back and watch MASH because, or Cheers, because people say really great things about them and they're culturally important.
Cheers.
Sorry,
I just said cheers out loud in a pseudo-sexual way because I like that show so much. But against the speed thing, I've been slowly watching all of Cheers, which has felt really nice.
Yeah. I will say Star Trek on 1.5 speed, it's so or the older Star Treks, it's so dialogue heavy. Like there's not a lot of visual going on, so it's like the perfect show to just like I need to finish the original series, and I'm a bad Trekkie for not doing it. So that's just me being a fraud. But anyway, unless you have anything else to say, Serby, I think it's time to talk about daylight savings time, which I love complaining about.
Yeah, so for all of our listeners / viewers in the United States, we start daylight savings time this weekend. I think in Europe they wait another week, or they either already did it. They've already done it. Okay, yeah. So daylight savings time, it's starting, and I know that it's a kind of popular thing to complain about it, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about why we do it, what we're doing to consider changing it, and what some of the effects are. And last year especially, I got really into some of the genuinely devastating effects of daylight savings time because I needed empirical evidence to back up my ranting. But to start at the beginning, daylight saving time. Also, daylight saving time, not daylight savings time. We all say savings. I still do it, but it is daylight saving time. Started during World War I to save energy. I for a while thought that the whole gist of it was to have more daylight time for agricultural production, but I guess it was for the conservation of energy, because when the sun's out later in the summer, we don't have to turn our lights on and things like that. And then, of course, one of the arguments used for it in the winter is that by shifting daylight up, it helps us get up for work. We can start working earlier, and when kids are waiting for school buses, they don't have to do it in the dark. Now, one thing that I saw recently is that the energy saving thing is, according to a research study, unclear or non-existent. So the argument that this is helping us save energy seems to be kind of moot. And then recently, a bunch of states have passed laws making daylight saving time permanent. However, so like California, for example, did that. We voted on it in 2018, but all we really voted on was that the state legislator can do this if they want to. But a weird thing with all these daylight saving time voting is, would it make daylight saving time the permanent thing, or make pre-daylight saving time permanent? So one thing I'm curious what we think about. If we were going to lock it in, where do you want to lock it in? Do we want more of that sunshine early in the day or later in the day? And of course, we already have some states that don't do it, like Arizona and Hawaii. Don't let anyone screw with them. The thing that I find most significant about all of this, though, is if you look up stats on car accidents and heart attacks, they are at the highest in the daylight saving time, and I feel so stupid that I'm about to ask this. Which is the one where we lose an hour of sleep?
Yeah,
The spring.
The spring one, yeah. The spring one, straight up, people get like real hurt. Like people die because of daylight saving time. It produces a micro jet lag in everyone that experiences it, and it leads to people screwing up when driving. It messes up our internal clocks and rhythms and stuff like that. So it's a genuinely destructive thing that leads to bad stuff. Where is this? I won't get into the big thing, but yeah. Oh yeah, the number of deadly accidents jumped to an average of 83.5 on the spring forward Monday, compared with an average of 78.2 on a typical Monday. So, and that's according to data from the U.S. National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. So stuff goes up, and of course heart attacks go up as well. So my question for you all: A, what do you think about daylight saving time in general? And B, what if you had to lock it in on one side of it? And I feel like this is so sloppy and stonery when I try to talk about this. But if you have to lock in the summer schedule or the winter schedule, which one would you like to be all the time?
I think I'm most mad at the winter change. I've been anxious the whole time you've been talking because I don't understand which one is forward and backward and which one is more or less. But I think I read in that
I don't know
article-
what real time is. I don't know which one is real, and it really stresses me out. But sorry.
Yeah.
I think winter time is real time, because I think the whole daylight saving that's a period of time where we shift the clocks forward to create more daylight. Someone listening to this right now, yeah. And I know someone who's listening that knows all of this is just shaking their head and is so mad that a bunch of idiots don't know this. But I think that's the aberration, the thing that changed in World War I was the extending of daylight during that time of year by moving the clocks forward.
But I think what's going to happen now is that you're going to, because of the shift, you're going to get out of work and it's going to, at 5 or 6, and it's going to be dark.
Yes, that's what's about to happen.
That's what I hate. So
I hate it so badly.
Serby.
So I like having more daylight at the end of the day. I hate getting out of work and it's dark at like 3. That bothers me. I'd rather have more daylight when I'm done and I can live my life. Overall, my feelings about daylight saving time, I don't know. It bothers me every year, twice a year, but I think for me, the biggest pain point is the effect it has on work. Like meetings get shifted because of working with EMEA. That really bothers me. And I know it's the same thing, like until we catch up with them. That's always a really big problem. I either end up working earlier or later. So for me, it always comes down to work. Like if it hinders my work schedule at all, I'm against anything. So I'm really bothered this week.
Well, and it's just so absurd that it's a thing that we came up with during World War I with faulty reasoning behind it. Like the idea was we'd save energy. It doesn't save energy. And 100 years later, we still do it. The farmer thing comes up because the idea is right that by when we shift in the winter, it lets farmers get to work earlier or something like that, right? God, I feel like an idiot.
I feel like I've been harboring this like anger towards like farmers and anybody who works in the agricultural industry for years.
So we know you hate service industry workers. So you hate the people that both grow your food and that serve your food. We know you hate tipping. So every step of the food chain, Serby hates you.
No, but I honestly was like, well, why do we have to shift this because of farmers? Like,
No, I felt like that growing up too. Like, I think I was mad at agricultural America. For this thing. But another thing, so they've done research as well. So the research now is like, okay, if we're going to lock in one of the times, which one should we do? And by all accounts, having the summertime be our all the time would be better for things like health and leisure. The idea is that many more people will take advantage of daylight after work and do things outside, whereas when it's dark all the time, people are much more likely after work to just like go home or go to the bar or do something that might not be watch Netflix on 1.5 speed. So from even like a public health perspective, on top of people not dying in car accidents and having heart attacks, people seem to have more enjoyable lives of recreation and leisure when they have access to sunlight after traditional working hours.
Yeah, it seems this is a non-studied, non-evidence-based scientific opinion. So
Say
it's not
it.
a scientific opinion, but it seems like it makes seasonal depression so much worse or easier to get because if you're not getting enough daylight, that's like fucking up your circadian rhythm and all the things
Yes.
associated with seasonal affective disorder. It's like, great, we're going to completely rob you of even that 1 or 2 hours that you might get. And that seems shitty.
Yeah.
Also, you feel like a cave dweller to like, or not like a cave, like you feel like a mole person. You go into an office, there's no windows, and then you come out and it's dark, and you're just like,
Yeah.
I live in darkness.
Yeah, and like not to have 2 weeks in a row where I speak to my mental health, but to do exactly that. When I lived in Scotland for a bit, and I lived pretty far north in Scotland, and there in the winter, it would straight up get kind of light around 10:30 a.m., and by like 2 p.m. is getting dark outside. So you have this 3 to 4 hour window where there's some like gray diffused light, and I got so lethargic and depressed, I got prescribed like a what are they called, like a light box,
Yeah.
which diffuses like I know a lot of people in like New York and the Northeast use those and stuff like that. But just because our bodies don't do well in those conditions, and you really do not only feel like a cave dweller, but like half of a person or a car on like an empty tank. And especially if you're someone that doesn't get up early, and I think our society sometimes is mean to people that like to sleep in. If it's like that, and let's say you sleep in till like 11, you get going for the day, and then it's dark 3 hours later. And I know in the northeast of this country, it can get pretty dark by like 3:30 or 4 in some places. All right, maybe. All right.
Yeah. I feel well. At least like New York isn't as bad, but I think like
If you're like in Maine,
you're like, especially on a gray day, it just goes from
Yeah.
going gray to being like a darker gray, and then it's dark. It's not great, but there's someone said one of the commenters in the chat just said there's a John Oliver thing about daylight saving time, and the Varmer thing is bogus or made up.
Yeah.
And also we got a donation from Nathan who says that CPG Gray has a good video on daylight savings. So people who
cool.
are probably way more educated on these topics go watch those videos.
wait, then our three scientific minds, no one knows more about this than us.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would love someone to send us any like good reason that we keep doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because for the life of me, even devil's advocating, cannot think. The only reason I've heard from anyone is that children going to school in the morning, it's good if it's a light out. But then all I say to that is we know that kids go to school too early, and that's
Yeah.
already bad for childhood development. So don't you dare tell me we're doing this for the kids when we're already ruining the kids' lives by making them get up this early.
Also, kids are super adaptable. Like they can way easier adapt to being mole people than adults can.
Yes, children are mole people.
Also, I think some schools, depending on their after-school activities, they'll be in the dark anyway, walking home from school at like 4 p.m. or 5 p.m.
Yeah,
if
and
they're,
they all wear their shoes with the lights and the wheels in them, so
Yeah.
that they can
They're fine.
use that to see. That's a thing.
Yeah.
I know kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, give us a good reason. Give us one good reason for this, and Wisecrack, the corporation, will send you $1,000.
They won't do that. We
Legally
definitely won't.
binding, because I said it. Jared will
It's
write the
not-
check.
It's not legally binding. But cool. Well, with that, I think we can get into the mail thingies. Let me just check my notes because I think there might be another thing I have to say. So I want to do a better job as the Mr. Hostman of the show. Because we don't always communicate things as well. So, for instance, a lot of you we'll skip a week because we're busy, or Serby's eating a lot of French fries. Lots of reasons. Mike hasn't seen sunlight in too long. And you'll all leave comments like, we've died. What is wrong with us? And I'm not making fun of it. But I'm announcing our little break to communicate better. Also, we got a lot of comments constantly about where's Jared. Jared's around. Obviously, he still works for Wisecrack. But the plan was always sort of Jared hosts Respect Our Authority, the South Park podcast. He's busy with that. Show Me the Meaning. When November comes along, he'll be hosting the Squanch. So it's just like not feasible to have Jared do every single thing. However, for you Jared stands out there, because of our little November breaky kind of thing going on. He will be hosting an episode in November, and it was always the plan to like have Jared host, get the show started, and sort of pop in and out. So you guys want Jared when Jared's not busy doing 18 other podcasts. We'll try to get him in more. He'll replace Michael Burns because he's disposed. No, I'm kidding.
Get Michael out of
have him
here.
on. Sorry, what?
Nothing. I was embodying the people that want me out, and I was championing their cause. I hate myself more than anyone, so I relate to anyone that has a visceral hatred towards my presence. I get it.
People love you. I have a couple of friends who are like, Michael's so good. I love it when he's on.
Well,
yeah.
your friends are good, and we know that your friends are also wealthy, so I like them very much.
Anyway, yeah, I'm going to communicate things better. That seems like a nice, normal human thing to do. But anyway, communicate with us by sending us an email. You can leave us an email at culturebinge@wisecrack.co. That's culturebinge@wisecrack.co. There is no M. Or you can leave us a voicemail at 1-213-534-8807. I'll say that slowly because sometimes it's hard to hear. 1-213-534-8807. And also shout out to, I want to not fuck it up. Tejat. Nope, fucked it up. TEJASWI. Harvey. Serby made a hard to accept but true point about how people binge watch to also fit in. The dopamine hit is good when people feel they know something others are talking about and fit in groups. Groups. Sorry about my terrible reading of that. But yeah, thank you for the donation. Cool comment.
I like it. We got some emails.
Yeah.
Should we get into them?
Yeah.
I need everyone should know I need Alex's permission before I do anything. So I needed clear verbal confirmation before I got scolded. So we got some emails. This one is from, hopefully I say this right, Kuda. It says, hello. On your last show, you brought up the issues of saving for the future or spending it now. My answer is my home nation of Zimbabwe. The people of Zimbabwe have not only lost their life savings once, but twice in the last 20 years. My grandparents' pensions went from about $700 US a month in 2000, oh my God, to 40 cents a month in 2008. Recently, they went from $400 a month US dollars in January 2019 to $2.50 in October 2019. That's horrible. From my experience, the life hasn't got a formula. Do what you feel is best for you. Regards, Kuda. Wow.
This kind of gets to your comments, Mike, but also others about like, what if everything goes to shit? And I think in the U.S. we are like very fortunate in that, like, obviously we've had shit, but places like Zimbabwe or I think Greece, it's like countries will run into hyperinflation where all of a sudden their life savings is now worth absolutely nothing. So yeah, that's just like a completely different ballgame and one that like, fuck, like what do you do? And I think like if you're in a country that's like has historically like unstable currency or anything like that, you're screwed if you don't save, and you're also screwed if you do save. And I don't really know what to say other than that, like, that is really shitty, but thank you for this email.
If anybody knows what to do in that situation, can you please write in? Because I'm very curious about how you hold on to money in those situations. Because normally I would say to somebody, invest in something like agriculture or art or something like that will hold its value. But in some developing countries, that's not an option. So if you know of a way for people in developing countries or who live in places where governments are unstable, please write in and let us know because I'm very curious.
I also just had like when you said that, a spark of a podcast I listened to. I think it was Planet Money. I think a lot of people to get around that invest in US dollars, which like artificially bumps up the exchange rate of US dollars and has led to maybe some issues in the past. But yeah, like a lot of people in other countries, that's just what they do. Or like people will buy gold, or that's like a big argument for cryptocurrency is that it is allegedly immune from those things, but I don't know if that will historically be true.
Yeah, not just a bummer. And to continue my accidentally stoner vibe today, I'm not on marijuana. I'm just saying I feel like my vibe's a little flighty. just like money is a bummer, man. It just sucks. It sucks that stuff like this happens, and economic stresses me out. Next email is from Jay. Says, "Hi, Wisecrack. Me again, smiley emoji. I wanted to comment on something that came up in the last podcast. The idea that there needs to be a balance between saving money and being quote unquote responsible, but also actually enjoying life while you can. I actually think this is one of the big mistakes that people make. There is no reason to value happiness in the future over happiness today. In fact, doing so only increases the potential risk that you will miss out if you were to get hit by the proverbial bus. Boom. I always put it this way. It's a better bet that your life will be short. Lean on the side of enjoying the now and be wrong than it is to bet that your life will be long and all your sacrifices will pay off. If you're wrong in the first scenario, it's because you have a long life. If you're wrong in the second scenario, it means you got hit by a bus and checked out before you could even see the fruits of your labor and sacrifices. That's way worse. Not advocating for everyone to quit their jobs and do nothing responsible, but just think it makes sense to lean on the side of enjoying life now. Tomorrow's not promised. Thank you."
Okay,
yeah.
I agree with this. I think I said something about this in the last episode. Like, you can't stop living your life. You have to continue to enjoy things, but I also think that you need to save, because you could be 65 and out of a job because you work in an organization full of ageist, and so I think you still need to save, but I do agree that you need to enjoy your life, because you don't know what will be in store. Maybe you might not be able to travel because you've been in a horrible accident, or you develop a health condition that prevents mobility. So you should continue to enjoy things today and not think you'll be able to do them in 50 years.
Yeah. To thread the needle a few episodes back, this to me seems to be one of the only arguments for having kids, because you're basically just investing that once you're 65, there's someone that like has to let you sleep in the basement if things go wrong. So you can kind of like live life, do whatever you want, and then you get to come crawling back, and they owe you at least 18 years of food and shelter.
Yeah, that's fair. I think this is an interesting email, but I respectfully disagree. I think the biggest stoner thought that I personally hold in my head is that like Alec at 5 years of age and 18 years of age and 30 years of age and 60 are just like different people. And so like not only have allegedly all of my cells been replaced, but like, you know, the way I think about things, the values. I mean, I still have the same weird voice and the same beard, but like, I don't know, like who the fuck is 18-year-old Alec? So I will often, like 18-year-old Alec would go to a lot of garage sales and buy like old records and had like way too many of them. And then they were in my mom's basement until I recently took them. And now I have like this awesome record collection thanks to 18-year-old Alec. And I'm like, thanks, dude. And so like, yeah, like I think when you're saving, it's always a conversation, and I feel like there's probably a statistical way to do this of like, what are my odds of getting hit by a bus or dying at the age of 30, to kind of like balance it out. But I think part of it is that you don't want to be 60 years old and be like, fuck you, 30-year-old Alec, you went on too many vacations, so now I have to be homeless, or like live off like a paltry like Social Security and have to eat ramen every day, which is gonna like cut my quality of life and the amount of time I live. At the same time, you don't want to be a miser who doesn't enjoy anything. And I kind of struggle with that, because my instinct is to not spend anything, not enjoy anything, and then just save it for my retirement, because, you know, I grew up not having a ton of money. So I'm like, I'm like Gollum, and it's my precious, and I need to, it's something like I could be unemployed tomorrow and I'll have no more money. So I wouldn't go quite as extreme, but I get the sentiment.
Yeah, I would simply add to that I think at my best, I try to conserve money in easy everyday ways so that I can splurge when it comes to big stuff. So by that, I mean, like, I try not to be the sort of person that like every other day is blowing money on something huge. But if an opportunity for like a fun trip or a cool concert or something comes up, like I want to be ready to say, fuck it, and do that. But one of the ways I feel like I can earn that is just by making little responsible decisions on a week-to-week basis that don't matter that much. Doing things that are a little bit cheaper, saving a little bit of money in a way that doesn't actively suck the pleasure out of my life, so that I can go big when it's time to.
That's exactly how I live my life, Michael. So
well,
thank you for articulating it so
great
concisely.
minds live alike. I got one more email
The greatest name ever.
I'm like, I need to get ready to say it. I'm just, because I know I only get to say it once, and it's going to be so good. And email from Bungus McChungus. In case no one heard me, I said Bungus McChungus. I love it. Hey, Wisecrack. In last week's episode, when responding to some emails, Michael, that's me, mentioned that his therapist had said he was prone to catastrophic thinking. I want to say thank you for sharing that, because I myself have recently discovered that is what I was going through as well. And I've never heard it mentioned elsewhere, so it really hit me when you brought it up. I think it's important to spread awareness for mental illnesses like anxiety, no matter what form it's in, and to show people that they are not alone in their struggle. Thank you, and I wish you the best in getting through it. Great name, good email. Thank you for your kind thoughts. And it's nice to hear that. You know, sometimes, even when I said that last week, there was part of my brain that's like, I probably shouldn't say this. Maybe I'm going to get roasted for that. So it's cool to know that someone with a name that great appreciated it.
I hope that's on your fake ID, Bungus McChungus.
I don't fake ID. I hope that this person went and waited in line at the DMV or whatever and said, hello, I'm here to get the forms for a legal name change, please. I will no longer be William Connor. I will now be Bungus McChungus. And I hope they made the person behind the desk like repeat it a bunch of times to get it right. But anxiety's real.
I'm really glad that you brought that up for several reasons. One, I didn't know that was a condition or a pattern of thinking. And two, I think it's important to, if you're comfortable, to share things like that, because it makes other people feel less alone. And I think it's one of those things that like people don't really talk too much about, like anxiety or depression or things that they're going through, because it can be viewed as a vulnerability or a weakness in some way. And I have anxiety. I have a lot of issues. And so it's always makes me happy when somebody else brings it up, because it's like, oh, that's nice. Like, not that I'm glad that you're going through something similar, but it's nice to know that there are other people out there that have similar issues or that have other struggles that they're combating as well. Because I think it's easy in today's world when we look at social media or things like that, like everything looks so happy. People only focus on like the positive things, which is really good. But I think it can make other people feel like, well, how come things aren't going as well for me? Or how come other people aren't stressed out or anxious and nervous?
Yeah, not to be sappy, but I hope anyone listening knows, anytime you're feeling stuff like that, we do the thing where like we're the only one that feels that. However many people you think are going through what you're going through, multiply it by 10 to 50, and that's how many people are going through that, which I know doesn't make anyone feel better, but you're definitely not the only one out there. And especially like you just said in social media, we're very good at our representatives of who we wish we were being online as our avatars, and not our crumbling, fragile soul that we really are. So you're not alone, y'all.
Yeah, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but I feel like even for people who don't have like everyone has like kinds of anxiety, some obviously a little more extreme than others, but thank God for Gen Z making all these social anxiety memes, because there's even things that I'm like, you know, when I'm talking to a new person, I just have these weird thoughts that stress me out, and then I see a meme about it, I'm like, oh, other people think that. That makes me feel so normal now.
Zoomers are so rad.
Sorry. Oh, Gen Zoomers. Yeah. And yeah, like even, I mean, I don't catastrophic think about things all the time, but occasionally I do. For instance, someone in the comments said that I was mean to you, Mike, and I was joking with you, but now I'm like, I'm too mean and everyone hates me, which is probably true.
That's not true. That's not true.
Okay. Well, if I'm mean to you, it's out of love, Mr.
It's in a fun way. I hope anyone knows that, yeah, Alec and I have an established rapport, and he would never talk to me like that in real life.
Also, Anthony Robinson says, Alec makes me self-conscious because my beard isn't as well developed. And you don't have to worry about that, man. It's, you know, being a hairy man is not all that it's not cracked up to be anything. It's not great.
Beards come in all shapes and sizes, and they're all wonderful.
And also, there was a long time, boomers, where beards were not in fashion, and I worry every day that they'll be out of fashion, and then I'll just be a weird hairy guy. It's kind of like how Burt Reynolds was sexy for a while, and then was revolting for a while, and now I think he's sexy again. I can't tell.
He's dead.
Wait, he is?
Yeah, Burt Reynolds is dead. You just called a dead man sexy.
I mean, pour one out for Burt Reynolds.
Wow.
You gotta make everything. Now I'm having more anxiety. Thanks, Mike.
It's like, I'm worried that I'm an asshole. By the way, this dead man is hot.
Listen, I don't think that's the worst thing I could say about a dead guy. But anyway, I think that's a great place to leave
Rest
it.
in power.
Yeah, rest in power, you sexy, sexy man. So that wraps up our show. Thank you, everyone, for listening, for live streaming. Everyone who's wondering if we do read the comments, it would get very distracting to comment them all the time. But you can find Surby on Twitter. She's at SurryPatel22. I think Michael's at Michael O'Burns on Twitter also. And I am at Wisecrack Alec. Follow us all. Talk to us. We're sometimes interesting and anxious people. Leave us a review on iTunes. Thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring us again. And so our next episode, I believe, will be November 7th. And we'll have a couple more. And then that big break. So see you in a little bit.
Bye. Daylight saving forever.
Boo.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.